Hi guys and welcome back to the channel, I'm David. Apologies for not uploading anything recently, but I've been a little burnt out with the hobby if I'm honest. I've been really busy at work with various exams and I just haven't really had the time if I'm honest. Also, I passed my driving test and I've bought my first car, which is great, but also cars are expensive. But no, I'm getting back at it now. Feeling reinvigorated and re-inspired to move on with the railway when I get home for the Christmas period. So yeah, I thought I'd make this video explaining my track plan and how it's changed over the last couple of years. Okay, so here we have the track plan from about 2 years ago in February 2023. That was when this track plan was uploaded to YouTube, and it's only 10 foot by 12 foot. And it was pointed out in my first track plan video that this is somewhat of a train set track plan. It's a simple roundy with a TMD at the bottom and a storage yard at the top. And I hate to use this word, but it's not the most prototypical. So this has changed over the past couple of years, and you'll have seen it in various layout update videos and different progress reports. I've thrown in lots of different track plans and different clips of various changes, but I thought what I'd do is put them all in the one place, in chronological order of how those changes have occurred in my head, or on my laptop at least, in my screenshots folder. But as you can see, there has been all sorts of changes, and I use all sorts of different software, drawing by hand, using Scam, which is a track planning tool, and yeah, I've had all sorts of plans change over the last couple of years. And they've led to a decent design, I think, for what I'm going to call my dream layout. Most of it has been built in the loft or a major section of it, but it will get larger as I get my own house and hopefully it's my own sort of railway shed or outbuilding, and it will turn into this. So here you can see we have a nice motive power depot or traction maintenance depot, the main scenic run. Now you've already seen this up in the loft, the storage yard, and on top of it a Branchline station, and then this section down here, which I'm going to talk about right at the end of the video, which at the moment is configured to be a station, which is new, but it could have some different functions. But I'll show you all of this in a moment. We're going to go right back to square one, and I'll show you the changes as they happened. So starting back with that original track plan, as I said, it's 10 foot by 12 foot, which is not the largest, and it was by no means the most realistic track plan. And the first change was to rotate that by 90 degrees. And here you can see we've now got a 12 foot by about 17 foot run. Obviously the storage yard has been cut off here, but that would come out another, I think it's 2.5, 3 feet this way, so it probably ends about here. So this is a slight improvement on the previous design. We've still got the same design of maintenance depot, but we'll change that in a second. But now we've got this much longer scenic run, and this is the plan I had when I started to build the scenic sections. Initially just this viaduct, which you probably would have seen on my channel as a standalone unit. I then built the village that goes next to it, and then I built this board down here with a tunnel on it, and all of this was just based on this plan to begin with. This probably stands around the 2023, late 2023 time is when I had this plan. So this plan was fleshed out a little bit, and you've definitely seen this before. This has got some more of the scenic elements. This is when I was designing this area, so it's got the road coming over through the village, and we fleshed out the TMD with various buildings. You can see this was the plan for the lift out section for the traction maintenance depot. If you remember, I've already built that, and I'll talk about this in a minute. I'm not sure what's going to happen to it. And you can see we've added the idea of the Branchline station on top of the storage yard. Now, to achieve this separation, where we've got storage yard underneath and Branchline station on top, we need some inclines. Now, this is a very crude drawing I made to try and explain something to someone on RM Web about 1.5 years ago, so excuse the fact it was drawn in MS Paint. But this whole section here, so the lift out section, the storage yard, are what I'm calling the datum level, and it's completely flat, or as flat as I could get it. And this is what I'm calling 0. You then have a ramp up on either side, so 2% this way, 2% this way across the viaduct, or it might actually be about 1.5% off the top of my head in reality, and they lead up to the motive power depot. Now this sits about 45 millimeters or 1.7 inches above the storage yard. Now, this is nowhere near high enough to allow trains to pass underneath the Branchline station. However, it is just enough that if I start a 3% incline up in this corner and take it all the way behind the scenic section in a hidden incline, that we get 170 millimeters or 6.7 inches of clearance between the very top of the rails in the storage yard to the very top of the rails in the Branchline station. Now, this is just enough that I get some decent clearance underneath it, and I can have trains stored in the storage yard or running through the storage yard and have this Branchline resting on top. Now, this is actually the next section I'm going to build for the layout. I've got some footage from back in August of building some Grange and Hodder baseboards for the Branchline, and then I'm looking forward to, in the next couple of weeks, when I go home for Christmas, I'm going to lay the track for the Branchline, hopefully. But first, let me show you the plans. So you've probably seen these plans in various videos, but again, just to put them all in the same place, this is one of my very initial plans for the Branchline station. It's a really simple design for a terminus at the end of a Branchline. It's completely made up, it's not based on anywhere, although you might recognise these plans as being broadly similar to an old layout I made called Cherrybrook. Made this whilst at university, and it didn't last very long, to be honest. I got as far as laying the track before I dismantled it, to save space for one in my university bedroom, and also to regain a lot of the track. A lot of the points are being used in my storage yard at the moment, and I've got those point motors actually, in fact, and they're going to be reused. But this is just a view into one of my design processes. So you can see this is a really basic sketch made in SCARM, or Simple Computer Aided Railway Modeler. So if we look at that in more detail, you can see I've got a bit of a collage here, and we've fleshed out the track plan itself. But going through this collage, river a la Dart. So this is a photo of Kingswear. It's an inspiration of mine actually for this section of the layout, to just have this single track running along an embankment right next to the river. I think it should look really nice if I can scenic that well. Here you can see Will's Watermill produces flour. I'm actually thinking now of scratch building my own building. But basically, yeah, the idea is we're going to have grain brought in on the trains, comes into the goods sidings, it's then loaded by an auger into the back of a truck. The truck takes it along the road into the watermill. Going round, we've got a ratio goods shed. I've just always really wanted one, to be honest. Overgrown sidings. This is Sleaford Station off the top of my head, and you can just see this dead grass between the rails. It gave me a good idea for what I want to do for this yard. We have a nice level crossing here with some sort of station master's house and gardens, maybe some sort of allotments just in the back here, just to add a bit of scenery. And then finally, looping back to this river, you can see I want canal boats and river boats just to be moored up, and I've got some more developed plans for this, and you'll see that in the next video. I've actually already bought a load of resin kits for boats, and I might get some of those done over the Christmas period, I'm not too sure. So here are those plans, just slightly larger. You can see it'll be nice for operations. You can have passenger trains, maybe some DMUs running into the platform here and running out again. You could also have, I've got a parcels train. My idea is that can be brought in, loco into head shunt, run around, reconnect, put it out again, and then if anything's going into the goods lines, you can pull them in, do the same run around trick, and then shunt them into these sidings here. And you've got the little head shunt to allow shunting whilst there's passenger movements going on. I think it should be a really nice little layout. My idea is it's designed to be sat on top of the storage yard, as I've said throughout, but also I'm thinking it could work as a standalone layout, perhaps with its own fiddle yard. As I keep saying, the layout is designed to be going into some sort of shed in the next sort of 2 to 5 years when I get my own house that's large enough, or has a large enough garden for a decent sized railway shed. But in the short term, when I'm looking at getting a flat or a house with my girlfriend in the next year or so, I might have just enough room to have this nice 12 foot by 18 inches module, and I could fit my own little storage yard on here. And also, I mean, I'm very busy with work, but I could potentially take this to exhibitions. Don't hold me to that, but we will see. So here are just a few photos of some more ideas in detail. So this is some ideas. This is a 3D model of my scratch build for the watermill. So there'll be some sort of water wheel here going down into a resin river, a nice large stone warehouse. And I was thinking this could be a little brick building for the bakery. All of this really needs to be fleshed out and be brought into fruition, but that's just an outline of my ideas. You can see here I was planning which Bachmann Scenecraft buildings to get. So this is rough dimensions from the Bachmann catalogue, and then you can see a list of them here compiled. And then finally here, I couldn't resist, is a little sketch in MS Paint of that station. So you've already seen this in the previous clip, but yeah, so I was planning on having an embankment in the corner just to hide the corner. So this will be where the back scenes meet, and if I had the platform going all the way to the end at the buffer stops, it'd be really hard to get that to blend in. But if I can have it nice and overgrown behind, it should look quite good. So yeah, overall, a lot of detail has gone into the planning of the branch line, and I'm just excited to get it started, to be honest. So I've built the baseboards. I've got the footage from that from back in August that I really need to edit together, and that will hopefully be coming out soon in some sort of coherent video. I've bought all the track already. I've got a lot of Pico bullhead track. That's all sat waiting, ready to be laid when I next get a decent stint at my parents' house. I've also got all the point motors. Those are going to be Cobalt Digital point motors from a previous layout from West Canal Sidings. I've pulled those off. They're ready to go. I've got some signals. I've got some brass kits to build semaphore signals. I've got a load of resin kits for the boat. So yeah, I've got so much stuff ready and raring to go for this layout, or this section of the layout, I should say. I'm hoping it should come on relatively quickly. So stand by for a video on the Grange and Hodder baseboards in the coming weeks. So the next section is the Motive Power Depot, or as it was formerly going to be, the Traction Maintenance Depot. So this is the design I settled for initially. There's not much wrong with it, to be honest, but it's kind of a more modern design, probably based on more of the 80s, that sort of era. Yeah, this is probably too modern for what I wanted to achieve. So I ended up looking at a load of videos, and I looked at some books as well on motive power depots rather than traction maintenance depots. The difference being that motive power depots are for steam engines. So this is a plan I came up with. You can see the old design at the top here and the new one at the bottom. And you see we've had a massive change in layout. This is still 12 foot by, I think it's 3 foot. It could be 2.5 foot. So it's a decent chunk of layout. But what I've done here is at the top, this is all designed really for diesel engines, and so we've got fueling over here, we've got a shed here, a wash plant here, a big office building there. But I think that's just a bit too modern. So what I've done now is I've compressed that to one corner. So we've got fueling on a track here, we've got a diesel shed here, but I've freed up all this space here for one, a much more complex junction, which is something I've been interested in modelling, which allows movement from any of the main lines into the yard, and from the yard into any of the main lines, and also allows from branch line to each main line, and vice versa. This has been designed after a lot of work on RM Web, talking to people who know an awful lot more than I do to try and get it to fit into one space, and it's not on any of the baseboard joints. So a lot of track work on this baseboard. It's going to cost a heck of a lot in Pico track, but no, I'm looking forward to it. And then also I've got this coaling stage at the back here, so a nice Great Western brick coaling stage with a ramp up to it, a large steam shed and a turntable. Now this isn't the final design. I actually altered it slightly. You can see that here. What I've done is just swap the turntable in the shed, because it allowed steam locos to come in and run around each other in the coaling lane, which is slightly more prototypical running, again, to use that word. It's also freed up some extra sidings here to allow for coaches to be parked, or for derelict locos perhaps, or something to be left in these sidings, which I think will look quite good. And then also I've added some extra lines around the diesel shed. Now, if you'll remember, I did make that lift-out section, that module with the Bachmann Scenecraft diesel shed on it, and I started to make the West Hill Wagon Works interior for that. Now, let me know what you think. I'm not sure. Do I continue with the Bachmann shed? I've put a reasonable amount of work into it already, what with the West Hill Wagon Works interior, and painted the insides, and I've 3D printed roof trusses and things. But I just keep thinking it is it is pretty standard on a lot of layouts, and I don't know if it feels almost like cheating to use a resin kit that large. I mean, I know on the Branchline I'm using a lot of Scenicraft buildings, but you don't often see a full different high street of Scenicraft buildings. But that particular diesel shed, you just see it everywhere. So I am tempted to scratch build my own 3 or 4 lane shed to go here, or even if I stick with a 2-lane shed, I might swap it out. But just let me know what you think in the comments. I can always sell that Scenicraft building with its interior, and I might get some decent money for it on eBay, so not too sure. I could even finish that as a standalone diorama and then have a different building that goes in here. Anyway, I digress. So yeah, this is the overall plan for the Motive Power Depot as it currently stands. A nice large section for scenery here. Thinking this could be a potato field, actually. I think that would look quite nice. And then we've got a tunnel here with a woodland on it, and that will blend into the woodland that already exists at the end of the scenic section. So yeah, to just show you that with what I've already modelled, you probably recognise this is the viaduct board, the village board, and the tunnel section, and that will eventually flow into the Motive Power Depot. Now, there's no room for this in my parents' loft, but yeah, in probably 2 to 5 years' time, when I've bought my own house and have my own garden shed large enough for this railway, I can start building that. And that will flow around here into this little board here, which is the lift-out section. The idea being, if I had a 17-foot shed, as in a large rectangle like this big, 17 foot by 12 foot, this would be where I envisage the double doors being to get in. So this is a nice 3-foot lift-out section here. If I just add on the storage yard, there you can see that is the full plan as it currently stands for the future layout. Although I have made some alterations already, and the way I'm going to show you this is to continue with my systematic changes as they've happened through time. The first being to change it to fit into the loft. Now, if you remember, I've got this scenic section along one side of the loft coming into the storage yard. Then we hit a beam here. So what I've had to do is just shorten this set of points here. That does cut down my running somewhat to having slightly shorter trains, although I don't think I mind it. I think I've got 6 coach trains at the moment running, which really isn't too bad, and it looks perfectly fine going across the viaduct. Now, of course, none of this fits in the loft either, so we'll just swap that out. So you can see this is more what it looks like now. We've got the scenic section, we've got the storage yard with this cut-off corner here, running onto my bookshelf and around the back. We've got my desk there. Now, of course, you can't see any of this. This is all hidden away in the little storage section there. We've got the Christmas decorations and things and a lot of stuff, a lot of my own stuff, actually, that should be going into my own house when I get it. And then, of course, we'll finally add, there is the ladder down out the loft. And that's where we stand currently, right now, at my parents' house with the layout. And this is what you will have seen in the last video or two. Now, my plans moving forward, as I've said, over the Christmas period, is to build the Branchline station, and that will just slot in there as a lift-out section. So, as I said, that will be a permanent feature on this full layout, but also it could be a standalone. I could operate that entirely on its own as its own little layout, and I'm looking forward to getting that built. Okay, so this is the final design for what's going in my parents' loft and what's going on in the next couple of years as I make that Branchline station and get this fully scenically developed running around the loft. But if we go back to this overall plan, now this is again the stretch plan for probably 2 to 5 years from now, but a 17 foot by 12 foot design fits in quite a large but still DIY buildable shed or outbuilding. So of course up in the loft there's no need for any sort of access as the access hatch to the loft is right in the middle of the floor, so there's no need for any break in the track. But when I move into a shed, I'm thinking at the bottom centre there is probably going to be where the doors are to get in and access the railway room. Now initially this was just going to be a plank, but as you can see here, I moved on into thinking that could be a scenic section, and I went for a really simple station. I thought that's something that's not modelled very often on railways. We often get carried away and do much larger stations, but just having this simple double track main line, or branch line even, going through 2 single really small platforms, just a small station halt, something that doesn't often get modelled. And I'd always thought that could be some sort of lift out module. I could build that wherever I want to build it, and I can slot it in as and when needed. But it suddenly dawned on me the other day on Instagram. If you don't follow me on Instagram, it's at Horsey Railway Modeller. Link will be in my bio on YouTube. I was talking to a fellow modeller, and we were sort of saying, with that sort of lift out section, there's a really good opportunity to add multiple different modules there. So if I settle for a standard size, for example a 900 by 400 millimeter module from Grange & Hodder, I can have the one that's got this very simple station halt on it, or I could do different designs. So yeah, this is where this idea comes from, for actually having quite a large station on the railway. Now, of course, this is only 3 foot long at its peak, so it would be really hard to actually get a full station in there. But I can use the old trick that many model railway modelers use, which is to cut the station in half and have it disappearing underneath some sort of bridge. So this really opened up the possibilities. So what I've ended up doing is I've taken inspiration from Wellington Station in Shropshire. Now, I've not spent too much time at Wellington Station, but I've always known it's had a relatively interesting track plan. It's a double-track main line that breaks into 4, and this allows goods trains or slower passenger trains to be overtaken by express services within the station, which is quite interesting. It's also got a bay platform, and in the past it did in fact have an engine shed and a goods yard and everything, but this was pared back and demolished until you get to the point we're at today, where there's a single bay platform and the 4 tracks between the 2 main platforms. Now, in order to facilitate this, of course, we needed 4 tracks going off scene, and that didn't really work with my fiddleyard design. So what I've done is, in that nice long straight section, I've added 2 points, and this allows 4 tracks to disappear off scene. I'm hoping, from the viewer's perspective, if I stop the trains in the perfect place, it should look as if there's nice long platforms there, and I can fit a 6 or 10 coach train even into the end of these platforms, and you can imagine you're only really seeing the last little section of platform. Of course, the only thing that does have to be quite short is the bay platform, which is only going to be realistically long enough for about a 2-coach DMU, but that's no worries for me, really. I'd have preferred 3, but there's no real way to fit that in with the point work. Now, as I said, this is inspired by Wellington. It's not an exact replica, but I'm looking forward to some scratch builds, kit bashing, using various items to try and give it as close a feel to Wellington as possible. Now, my idea being, with this being a lift-out section that is replaceable, I should be able to model this whenever and wherever I would like to. So I'm thinking of starting it at work. So whilst I'm away from my parents, I'll have something to work on. And to that end, I've printed out a track plan, and I've got it on my desk at work, just to size things up. Of course, one of the great things is I'm not just limited to these 2 different stations. Of course, I do want to build the very small halt, and I do want to build this larger replica of the end of Wellington Station, but also I can do whatever I want, really. So I'm thinking I could even fit in seasonal things. So if I want to model the winter with some snow, or autumn with lots of brown trees, etc., the world is my oyster, basically, and I can just slot in as many of these modules as I want. Now, of course, it is a slightly expensive venture, because each of those boards is probably about 40-50 quid, and then the track that goes on it obviously isn't free, but it would mean I could have so many different options for scenes. And of course, when it comes to filming running sessions, you won't really see any of the hassle that it is swapping the different scenes out off camera, and it should just mean I can have a continuous shot of a train running through one station, and then going through some sort of intermediary scene, and then into another station, and it will look like my layout is so much bigger than it really is, all just by swapping out this 3-foot section for different scenes. Food for thought anyway. This is just a plan at the moment. None of it's happened yet, and I've got years until I'll actually need this lift out section. However, I am thinking of starting this diorama of Wellington Station in the near future. Well, thank you very, very much for watching. Thank you for subscribing. Again, I'm always impressed with the number of subscribers that I'm gaining on this channel. And yeah, I'm amazed that so many people find my railway interesting. I'm hoping in this next coming week to get the video edited on building the Grange and Hodder baseboards. I'll then be at my girlfriend's parents for a bit before Christmas, but then after Christmas, I'm hoping to spend a decent amount of time at my parents' house, in which case I'll be able to lay the track on that Branchline station. I've also got lots of various footage of different bits and bobs I've done on weekends visiting my parents' house. So I've installed a lot of MBR trees, which look beautiful, and I've got some footage of that. I've done a few little bits and bobs around the village, painting up some Model U figures and animals. So I'll hopefully edit that together into some sort of smaller video that I'll get up at some point in the near future. But yeah, thank you very much for watching. Bye for now.